Nobody expected what Bumpy Johnson did when they insulted him. September 1948, Sal Bonnano walked into Bumpy's restaurant with 6 armed men and said the one thing you never say to the Godfather of Harlem. The racial slur echoed through the room like a gunshot. Everyone expected Bumpy to explode, pull his razor, turn that restaurant into a bloodbath. That's what S wanted, a reason to start a war. Instead, Bumpy did something that made S's blood run cold. He smiled, not a friendly smile, the kind of smile a man gives you when he already knows how you're going to die, and you don't. Then Bumpy stood up slowly, folded his napkin, placed it on the table, and said 6 words that would change the power structure of organized crime in New York forever. What he said made Sal Bonnano leave Harlem that night. What he said made the 5 families call an emergency meeting, and what he said wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Harlem in 1948 wasn't the Harlem you see in movies. It was a kingdom, and Bumpy Johnson was its king. He didn't rule from some hidden office or underground bunker. He ruled from Wells' Restaurant on 135th Street, a modest place. Red leather booths, checkered tablecloths. The smell of fried chicken and collard greens hung in the air like incense, but everybody who mattered in Harlem came through those doors. Musicians, preachers, numbers runners, politicians, even cops. They came because Wells' Restaurant was neutral ground. You could have beef with someone on the street, but inside those walls, you respected the peace, Bumpy's peace, because Bumpy Johnson had something the Italian mob, Irish gangs, and corrupt police all wanted: control of Harlem's numbers racket. The numbers game was simple. People bet pennies, nickels, dimes on 3-digit numbers. If your number hit, you won. If not, the house kept your money. It wasn't gambling too. Harlem, it was hope. A chance that maybe, just maybe, this week you'd win. And finally buy your kid those shoes or pay rent without begging your landlord. Bumpy didn't invent the numbers game. A brilliant black woman did. Stephanie St. Clair, they called her Madame Queen. She ran Harlem's numbers in the 20s and early 30s until Dutch Schultz and the Italians tried to move in. They nearly destroyed her. That's when she went to Bumpy. "Protect my operation," she told him in 1932, "and I'll make you the most powerful man in Harlem." Bumpy kept his word. By 1948, he controlled Harlem's entire numbers racket. Millions flowed through his hands every year, and the Italians? They hated it. Because in their world, black men didn't run empires, they worked for them. Frank Costello tried to negotiate. Bumpy refused. Vito Genovese sent threats. Bumpy ignored them. Joe Bonnano? He sent his nephew, Sal the Butcher Bonnano, to handle the Harlem problem once and for all. And that brings us to the insult that changed everything, September 19th, 1948. The night it all changed, 8:47 p.m. Wells' Restaurant was packed. 40 people, maybe more. The jukebox played Dizzy Gillespie's Monteca. Cigarette smoke curled toward the ceiling like ghosts. Bumpy Johnson sat in his usual corner booth, clear view of both doors and the kitchen. His wife sat across from him, elegant, poised, the kind of woman who could quiet a room just by. Walking in, Bumpy was eating a ribeye steak, medium rare, cutting it with the same precision he brought to everything in life. Methodical, controlled, no wasted motion. Then, the door opened. Sal Bonnano walked in first. -6'2", 230 pounds of muscle in a tailored suit. They called him the Butcher because of what happened to a guy in Brooklyn who tried to skim money from a Bonanno card game. Let's just say, they found pieces of him in 4 different boroughs. Behind Sal came his crew, 6 men, all armed. The bulges under their jackets made that clear. They didn't hide it. That was the message. The restaurant noticed. Conversations stopped. Forks froze mid-air. Even the jukebox sounded like it turned itself down. Like it knew something bad was about to happen. Sal walked straight to Bumpy's table. Didn't ask, didn't wait. Just stood there. He didn't wait to be invited. He just walked straight up and stood there, looking down at Bumpy like he was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Bumpy Johnson, S said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. We need to talk. Bumpy didn't look up. He kept cutting his steak, slow, precise. The knife made a soft scraping sound against the porcelain plate. I'm eating, Bumpy said quietly. Then he smiled, not a friendly smile, the kind a bully gives you right before he takes your lunch money. Yeah, I can see that. Nice restaurant you've got here. Real quaint. He leaned in slightly. But here's the thing, Bumpy. My Uncle Joe has a problem. He thinks it's time Harlem got with the program. The numbers game, that's Italian business now. Always should have been. Bumpy still didn't look up. But his wife did. She stared at S with a cold, steady look, the kind that could freeze a man in place. S kept going. So here's how this is going to work. You step aside. You hand over your operation. We'll give you a taste. 10% for your trouble. You keep your little restaurant, play the big man for your people. But the real money, that stays with us, where it belongs. The entire restaurant held its breath. No one moved. No one spoke. Bumpy set his knife down, picked up his napkin, dabbed the corners of his mouth, then he looked up at S for the first time. His eyes were calm. Too calm. That's a generous offer, Bumpy said evenly, but I'm going to have to decline. S's smile vanished. You're making a mistake. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, Bumpy replied. This isn't one of them. That's when S crossed the line. He said the word, the one you never say to a black man in his own place, in front of his wife. In front of his people. The fork in Bumpy's wife's hand hit the plate with a sharp clink. The sound echoed through the room, like a gunshot. The restaurant went completely silent. Not the kind of silence where people listen, the kind where everyone is deciding if they'll make it home tonight. Bumpy didn't flinch. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't show anger, but everyone who knew him, everyone who understood what Bumpy Johnson was capable of, felt their blood turn cold, because Bumpy Johnson, sitting perfectly still, was more dangerous than most men in motion. His right hand moved slowly, sliding into his vest pocket. All 6 bodyguards tensed, hands drifting toward their weapons. But Bumpy didn't pull a gun. He pulled out his razor, the same straight razor he'd carried since he was 16, the one that built his reputation on men who underestimated him. He placed it gently on the table, right beside his steak knife. You brought 6 men, Bumpy said quietly. His voice was so calm, it was unsettling. 6 guns into my restaurant, and you think that makes you dangerous? S tried to laugh it off. I think it makes me smart. No, Bumpy said. It makes you ignorant. He stood up slowly, folded his napkin with the same precision he'd used to cut his steak, then placed it on the table. The bodyguards reached for their weapons. Bumpy didn't even glance at them. You see these people? Bumpy said, gesturing around the room. You think they're just customers? Just folks eating dinner? S looked around. For the first time, doubt crept into his eyes. Let me educate you. That man by the door, I paid his daughter's hospital bills. That woman in the red dress, I made sure her husband never hurt her again. That kid washing dishes in the back, I kept him out of jail when the cops tried to pin something on him. Bumpy stepped closer. The bodyguards raised their guns halfway. But Bumpy didn't stop. Every person in this room owes me something. Not because I demanded it, because I earned it. He leaned in. You brought 6 guns into my house. But I've got 40 soldiers. He glanced around the room. They're just not wearing suits. S swallowed hard. Looked around again. The faces staring back at him weren't scared. They were waiting for Bumpy's signal. Now? Bumpy said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, I'm going to give you a choice. You apologize to my wife for using that word in her presence. Then you walk out of here and tell your Uncle Joe that Harlem is not for sale. He paused. Then Bumpy picked up the razor and opened it, slowly. The blade caught the light. You want to know why they call this Bumpy's Kingdom? Sal Bonnano had ended lives, 17 to be exact. He'd broken bones, torched businesses, extorted millions. Fear was something he usually inspired, not felt. But standing in that restaurant, surrounded by 40 silent witnesses, staring into Bumpy Johnson's cold, calm eyes, Sal Bonnano felt something he hadn't felt since childhood. Terror. Not the kind that comes from pain. The kind that comes from realizing you've made a massive mistake and there's no way out. Bumpy smiled again. That same quiet smile from before. The one that said he already knew how this story was going to end. Then he spoke. 6 words. 6 words that would echo through the underworld for decades. Your uncle will bury you tomorrow. The words just hung there like smoke. Sal's face turned pale. What? You heard me, Bumpy said calmly. You walked into my restaurant. Disrespected me, disrespected my wife, disrespected my people, and you think you're walking out of here? S's men raised their weapons. 6 guns now fully aimed at Bumpy. Bumpy didn't blink. You can shoot me, he said. Maybe you'll even kill me. But the second you pull those triggers, 40 people in this room will tear you apart. And even if you make it out that door, do you really think you're leaving Harlem alive? He leaned in slightly. This is my city. Every block, every corner, every alley. You're already dead. You just don't know it yet. The silence was total. You could hear the kitchen fridge humming, the tick of the wall clock, even someone's breath. Shallow. Panicked. S's hand was trembling. Just barely. But it was. And that's when Bumpy gave him something he didn't deserve. Mercy. Or, Bumpy said softly, you can apologize to my wife. Walk out of here. And never come back. Tell your uncle, if he wants Harlem, he can come himself, but he'd better bring more than 6 men. 10 seconds passed. Felt like 10 years. Nobody moved. Then, Bonnano lowered his gun. His crew looked at him, confused. But S wasn't looking at them. He was looking at her. Double quotes, Mrs. Johnson, he said quietly. I apologize. That word, I shouldn't have said it. She didn't respond. Just stared at him with those cold, unforgiving eyes. Sal stepped back slowly. His men followed, weapons still drawn, but lowered. They moved toward the door like men who just stepped off a landmine. At the exit, Sal turned back one last time. This isn't over, Bumpy. Bumpy didn't even look up. He picked up his fork, cut another piece of steak, and said, yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. The door swung shut behind them. For a long moment, the restaurant remained silent. Then, a single pair of hands began to clap. Slow, then faster. Then the whole room erupted in applause, standing, cheering. Bumpy Johnson had just stared down 6 armed mobsters and never fired a shot. She reached across the table, squeezed his hand gently. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes. I did, Bumpy replied. Respect is everything. You lose that. You lose everything. Sal Bonnano left Harlem that night. He never came back. 3 days later, the 5 families held an emergency meeting in Manhattan. Joe Bonnano wanted revenge. He wanted Harlem. He wanted Bumpy Johnson dead. But Frank Costello, a man who truly ran New York's underworld, said something that stopped everything. Asterisk. Bumpy Johnson runs Harlem because Harlem wants him to. We try to take it by force. We start a war we can't win. Not because we can't kill him, because we can't kill 40,000 people who die for him. Leave Harlem alone. And they did. From that night on, the Italian mob never tried to take over Harlem's numbers game again. They made deals. They negotiated. And most importantly, they showed respect because Bumpy Johnson reminded them of something they had forgotten. Power isn't just about guns or money. It's about loyalty. It's about earning the respect of people who don't owe you anything. But give it anyway. Sal Bonnano died in 1952. Heart attack. Some said it was natural. Others believed Bumpy had a long memory. No one really knows, but here's what we do know. After that night in September 1948, no one ever disrespected Bumpy Johnson in his own restaurant again. And that razor he placed on the table? He never had to use it, because sometimes the most dangerous weapon a man carries isn't made of steel. It's the love of his people. If this story about respect, power, and standing your ground moved you, go ahead and like this video. And subscribe for more stories like this. Share it with someone who needs to hear that real strength doesn't always show up with a fist. Drop a comment below. Have you ever seen someone command a room without saying a word? And don't forget to hit that notification bell for more untold stories about the legends who built Harlem with loyalty, presence, and unbreakable purpose.